chances are that you have a lot invested personally in your church and in how things are done. In other words, you care. And caring generally includes an emotional connection. This is a difficult time for those who care about their churches. Many congregations in our region see a future that is uncertain and a past that looks rosy by comparison. In the present moment, then, it is easy to look to the past for solutions. As congregations grapple with realities that they have not faced before, and as leaders struggle to discern a path forward through uncharted waters, people can have pretty strong feelings at the loss of how things used to be. Whenever the glory days were, the chances are it doesn't feel like we're in them now. And I think it can be helpful to look at what we are feeling through the lens of grief.
Our purpose here is not to heal grief. These videos are not intended as therapy. But when we look at the emotional processes that congregations go through during the time between pastors, there are some striking similarities between the emotions an individual may feel during a personal loss and how a group of people may experience an unwanted change. The emotions we feel are real, and they have an impact on how we function and how group decisions are made. Identifying those emotional processes can help us to not get stuck in any one phase.
A comment often heard once churches reopened after the pandemic closure was that we just need to get things back to normal. And I've heard a lot of people attribute their church's current struggles to the effects of the pandemic. The reality is that the church, the mainstream church, was already struggling, and the pandemic simply intensified and sped up what was already happening. But our desire to get back to where we used to be before may be seen as an aspect of grief. The reality for churches, just as for individuals who have lost a loved one, is that we can't go back. We cannot do things the way we used to. And if our focus is on trying to get back what's been lost, then we can get stuck in what some have called denial. It's time, together, to shift our focus forward.
The process of living with loss tends to make people edgy, anxious, angry. And people often latch on to someone to blame, the synod or the denomination or the younger generation who don't show up the way they ought to, or pastors who aren't willing to come and serve us like they used to. This is a time when a lot of congregations are experiencing internal conflict and a sense of unsettledness. Little things can become big issues, and that's just part of grief. Name what's been lost. But again, those days are over. Find healthy ways to release the anger.
Sometimes congregations decide to enter into some program that they don't really want and won't support because they think it might get some new people in the door, or because it will look good on paper to the pastor they are trying to attract. We can get caught up in trying to just do whatever we need to do for our church to survive. But the survival of our congregation is not and cannot be the real point. We need to look beyond ourselves, outside of ourselves, to rediscover our mission, what God has called us to do and be in the world together. It is a sense of mission and purpose that can breathe new life into a congregation that is struggling.
And sometimes, in the midst of changes and loss, congregations can enter into a period of sadness and lethargy. People become less involved, less committed. Council meetings become more of a chore, and the focus seems to be only on what has been lost. Recognizing and honoring this loss of energy is an important part of getting ready for what comes next, accepting what is and redefining what it means to be church. We are not as big as we were, but here we are. We don't have all the programs we used to have, but here are a couple things that really matter to us. Let's do them well. we don't feel successful anymore. Well, that's a real bummer, but it isn't what Jesus called us to be in the first place.
Acceptance of where we stand and who we are today moves us to shift our stance from facing backward toward the past to facing forward to a new reality. God still has work for us to do. So we may catch ourselves looking over our shoulder briefly every now and then, but our feet need to keep pointing forward on the path. And our focus must come back again and again to how God is calling us to live out our faith right here and right now. And what kind of person do we need to lead us? Not back to the past, but as the church we are right now and into the future.